Yo, what's up? Pedro,
What's
nice
up,
to see you.
Sam?
Hey,
To see you too, man.
so listen, we'll start we'll start a little slow because kind of give people time to hop on if they want. I don't want to, but um, aside from what happens in Social 19, there are all these kind of back channel things going on, and that people don't realize this that the class, this big lecture class, is connected to all these different dialogue groups or conversation groups. And in fact, going back to 1992, 1990, yeah, spring of dang man, no, yeah, spring of 92 is when we first started offering discussion groups in Social 19, so that all the students who are in come to the big lecture could have the opportunity to talk to one another in small groups, and which I found to be really valuable and very valuable for me, because then I knew that people were in conversation and thinking about lots of different things. So in any case, Pedro dos Santos is here, who today, and the two other facilitators who we'll bring on shortly, who is one of our facilitator trainers. You took Social 118 like really a long time ago, right?
Yeah, I took in 2019. Also, hey everybody, good to be here. And thanks for having us. Thanks for having World in Conversation be a part of the podcast. Because I feel like when I took Social 119, I feel like I'm an education theory student. Now I'm getting my graduate degree in education design, and just the brilliance that I've been able to see through Social 19, not just in the way that you're conducting the auditorium with 800 people and you're making, not talking and telling people the truth, but helping students articulate their positions and getting them to interact with each other. It's a very new way to approach sociology and education at an institution like Penn State. And then the brilliant part that you and Lori came up with of just like, how can we boil down these things that you're doing and you're able to do with the students of creating conversation, create a method, and then train people in this method so that the other 800 students, right, who are not in front of the class every day, can also have an experience of what dialogue is like with their peers. And I feel like that's what really inspired me to stick around. I've been since 2019 involved. It's what, 6 years now. And I just keep on
Yeah, that's
learning,
a lot.
like the pedagogy, but also the design, the structure. There's a really cool fluidity there with the way that you guys built this. And yeah, it's really appreciated. So
Oh
yeah.
man, it's so nice to hear you say that. I think, well, when you say built this, it's definitely Lori has built the guts. Like I built the factory, and I kept bringing new equipment in, and so we'd make more and more and more of the widgets of the whatever it is you build in a factory. But Lori really fine tuned everything, and like and really decided what we were gonna do. So yeah, so it's very cool. Really,
Yeah. And getting to learn from Lori and the way that she builds, and you're saying that, I know all the inspiration from both of you, but I also see the way that she relies on the staff and the people that she works with. I mean, so many people to
Mhm.
shout out from World in Conversation, but just the research and development that keeps on happening every
Yeah,
day on the ground to make sure it's still relevant, right? Like for a program like this to stay around for 30 plus years, it's got to have innovation, it's got to have adaptation, and you're always
yeah,
facilitating. You're never telling the truth, and you're never pushing things down. I feel like that's
yeah,
what draws
yeah,
people in. It's like, this is the way. It's never like that. It's always, what do you think we do next?
yeah.
To adjust.
Yeah. So it's interesting, sometimes like yesterday's class, I gave a platform to Kennedy, who has a very strong, perspective about like kind of DE&I stuff, right? I mean, she will easily throw terms around that I don't throw around, like oppressed and marginalized groups and oppressed groups and this kind of thing, which I think is really valuable for people to hear, right? Because you're not going to hear it from me. So why not listen to this another person who does have a certain perspective? That's very, very important. And I think there are probably a lot of people who more follow the class. I was thinking about this. Probably a lot of people who follow the class on a more regular basis probably aren't ready for something like that, you know, something that's so far left. But I think for me, it's so important to have different perspectives come into play.
And so what you're holding yourself from saying things that are too on one polar or the other because of your role as a facilitator, so that you can maintain the trust of the people who are watching. Is that?
Well, part of it is that, but part of it is just I don't have views that are far left or far right. So I don't hold those. So if I put them out there, you know, I have to put them. I sometimes will put them out there, say like, hey, here's a perspective, you know, from this way or from that way. But for me, sometimes it's nice just to invite people up or in who will hold a certain perspective and just let them do it, you know. And I think that, okay, that's cool. That doesn't mean what students say, you know, they never are speaking for me. So, you know, like,
And you know, something I can say about that too. Part of the fun of being in Social 19 is you start to see that people really hold positions, because it's so scary. In education, we have these things that there's certain things you're not supposed to say, or if you say, you might get slack back, you know, and people put you in a corner in a position. And then in your class, you're asking these hard questions, and you get to see, oh, people actually are thinking about the stuff that I'm thinking about. And it made me want to be like, oh, let me go and ask people stuff, you know? It's
yeah. It's all, every question is just, I have so many questions about so many things. I'm so curious, you know, that I don't, when I remove myself. So, you know, earlier, Eric Sell was asking, did I watch the Trump, the press conference with Zelensky? And I'm like, and so the answer to you, Eric, is no, I didn't. I'm going to follow what Jeff said. I just haven't. I've been really busy getting ready for my trip, so I haven't paid attention to the news at all. I will, but yeah, it's just. I mean, I don't know. There's just so many things. You know what I mean? Like God, there's so many things. It's hard. Do you find this, Pedro, that sometimes for you, it's harder, it's more and more difficult to have an opinion the more you hold the space as a facilitator, that it's harder for you to even find what you truly think about certain things?
I find myself valuing more my ignorance than I value the things that I know, because the things that I know or that I think that I know, they keep changing, you know, from year to year. It's like Trump is this guy, and then he's another guy, and then he's another guy, depending on the context that he's in. And it's tricky for me to hold those, but the curiosity and the ignorance seem just more, also more valuable, because most people that around me are usually holding more opinions, and they like to talk about their opinions. And so by being curious, I can just connect dots and see new things.
Yeah. I think for me, I can have a lot of more authentic reactions, you know. So like with Trump, for example, I listened to the one press conference that they did, and they were, making these big jokes about, not a press conference. It was their gathering of his core staff or whatever. I don't even know. And they were making jokes about all like people being laid off, you know, and like cutting the budget. And these are people's lives, man. And you're just joking about that. Like that's like, it's nothing. These are human beings, you know? And God, and I just thought, like, my first thought was just, that's so mean. It's just mean. Forget about what I think about the policy or the, you know, whatever it is. It's just the utter meanness, man.
I feel like that's when an opinion becomes something that has power behind it, more so than reading the news and articulating something over it. Is like, I know the people that he's talking, and it's a personal experience that connects with what you're seeing. And then it's like, this is something that matters to me more than engaging in the intellectual debate of
That's right. So that's kind of where I come in, you know, and I'm trying to hold as much space. And I think you and I both are doing this. And again, you're one of the trainers of the facilitator. So you got to take yourself to the next level. And you are one of the trainers. You were selected to be a trainer because you're really good at doing this. But you have to hold yourself at a different level of being willing to pull different perspectives out of people without saying what you think at any given moment.
Yeah, and to say that it gets tricky too, it's not always,
Yeah.
there's sometimes where it comes to the surface bubbling, and it's part of the method too. Is we have a co-facilitator. I don't train the students by myself, and so it's me and Brenton, and the students who facilitate dialogues at World in Conversation too are always in pairs, because we understand that like neutrality is not something real for a human.
Yeah.
There are certain things that
Yeah.
just hit home, and we have a personal experience with that opinion, and it just gets you in a certain way, and that's when we get to rely on each other to be like, hey, take the reins a little bit, because we're not neutral. We're trying to take all sides, but we're not neutral,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And well, let me ask you this question, and then shortly we'll bring in two facilitators, younger facilitators. But for someone your age, right? So what are you 26, 25?
25.
Okay. For someone your age who, you're really at the beginning stages of just opening your mind to the world, right? And you're from Brazil. You grew up in Brazil, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's important, right? That people understand that, you're coming from an outsider's perspective here. And you're Brazilian. I mean, that's the point, right? What's the value of, at your stage of understanding, what's the value of having the opportunity to listen to so many different people with so many different perspectives who are themselves trying to discover what those perspectives are?
Mm-hmm.
What's the value for you?
Right. And I think I have to go back into a little bit of my immigration story of, moving countries and realizing I didn't understand the culture that I was in. I moved when I was 15, and just seeing that I didn't really understand. And I was really afraid. The first reaction for me was of anxiety and fear of interacting and asking those questions, of appearing ignorant to other people, and then slowly becoming a facilitator, seeing what you were doing in class, and then learning the skills and cultivating it throughout my journey through World in Conversation, was really leaning into this as the joy of the experience of being away from home, is that you get to discover, the world is nuanced, it's complex, and the human life is just so full of little things that you get to learn about. If you go into a tooth, you can study it for your whole life and try to understand it. And I feel like for me, it's cultivating that joy of discovery it's how it's been important for me, and breaking through the fear of interacting with the world and asking questions about the world, and just wanting to see it, because it's not one answer, it's not one size fits. Nothing is, and there's more.
It's so interesting to think. I imagine myself back to when I was your age. Earlier I was talking about when I first discovered Korea, and I first started thinking about Korea, and I was studying Brazil, actually, of the many countries. I spent a lot of time studying the military authoritarian government in Brazil. And I remember having this feeling that I had to understand the world, and I had to have opinions, and I had to know something. If I didn't know something, then I couldn't go into class as an instructor or be a grad student at all, and like be able to say anything, and but it's so interesting that to do this job, you don't have to.
Seems like we lost Sam for a second. Just give him a moment to
rejoin. Did he get cut off?
Yeah, here he is.
Yeah, there we are. So you have to actually be something, right? You don't need facts. You don't need right. You have to be able to do something, which means that you have to know how to do this thing that you need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that? Like, how does that sit with you? That interpretation of. Whereas for me, and I'm going to go back a little bit, I was learning how to teach sociology, right? So I had all these theories and facts and data and so on that I had to just take in as much as possible so I could give them back to students. This is before I discovered that I didn't need to know any of that, right? But so I was just constantly memorizing and stuff, you know. I'd read a newspaper so that I could remember what was in the newspaper and then go tell my students. But you're not being asked to do that. You're being asked to just continually open up your mind. And when you think you have your mind open it more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What do you think of that?
I think that's a interesting quality about leadership. I think it's really learning how to work with the people that you're working with more than being the main person, you know. You have people who are very thoughtful around you. I think I like to think whenever I walk into a classroom, and I was talking to some other people the other day, is like, how do you feel comfortable calling on your students? And just because it's something that we do in a world in conversation that feels countercultural somehow in the educational space that we're in. But it's, to me, I'm always assuming they're thoughtful people and they're thinking. And if they don't have an opinion about that they'll think out loud and they'll come up to with something. And so it's part of the privilege, I feel like, of being here at Penn State too. But part of the privilege of, you know, being present with other people and willing to listen to them for the best things that they have to share is like, people are thoughtful. People are thinking, they want to be a part of change. They want to be a part of discussions. They want to be a part of a community. And if you invite them in, you draw them in through questions, you can create really powerful spaces for complexity and nuance. I'm using these words a couple of times now, I catch myself, but it's really about complexity and nuance. And that's what makes environments rich. And that's what makes problem solving an actual tool. Because if we just try to solve problems from one angle, we may come to a solution, but the solution just is not implementable because it needs to fit the different perspectives that are coming together in order to be a real solution. And so I cherish that part of
cool.
Asking questions, you know?
That's cool, man. That's such a huge challenge. And it's such a huge challenge.
Yeah.
You know, for you to be in graduate school and to still be able to ask questions more often than you give answers, right? Because being a graduate student is at some level about having answers. And so
I don't play that. I don't play that role in grad school.
Yeah. No, that's really cool.
How about for you, Sam? Can I ask you that same question about like, because you're very well read about so many things and the topics that you're bringing in Social 19, and you know things, right, about the things that you're talking about and are being talked about. And yet I see you taking the position of the question asker. And so over the years, like for a long time, where you gather a lot of quote unquote knowledge, and you're still leaning into this other pedagogical style of facilitating.
Well, sometimes first off, I understand that after 41 years, after so long, hearing myself talk, it's a point in which you just I got bored. I just didn't need to do it anymore, and it wasn't interesting. And when you bore yourself, you're really, and I wasn't necessarily boring for other people, but I was boring myself, and so it just became so much more interesting. Now, the fact is, I do have a lot, so sometimes I want to throw things in, and I want to say more than I do, and then but I don't. You know, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I don't know. Well, that's
because you see the value of what? What's the value that you see?
Well, the value is there's a certain entertainment value, including my own entertainment, right? It's so much more interesting to ask a question and see what these students are going to say, how they're going to answer it. It's more entertaining to me. And I know it's more entertaining to people on the stream, right? I mean, or to people watching, because if you want just expert opinions on things, well, there are a lot of experts out there who are smarter than I am on any given topic. So then people are just going to go watch them. But if you're going to watch this Social 19 channel, you're going to listen to people, you know, unless they have office hours is my place where I talk, but you know, you're going to listen to students. That's the point of it. So, but it is very strange, you know, to get to this stage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very. Hey, listen, let me why don't we bring in your two colleagues here? Wait, do you have another question before we do that?
They can be here for the night. I have a question for you once they're here too, because I'm curious
All right,
about.
okay.
Well, yeah, along with this idea of
Yeah.
you holding yourself in this way of being curious for the entertainment and the joy, really, of getting to know people of different walks of life. Your TED Talk
Yeah.
of radical empathy, and just keep
You know,
practicing that.
oh,
right?
well, here, listen, man. So yesterday's class, so Eric Sell, I'm going to respond to that. I think I've done two things that are just, two things that I think are just pure genius in my 41 years of teaching, right? Two things. That's it. Pure genius. One was my TED Talk in Iraq, and that's where, that led Bassem to me, which is really nice. Bassem is on the channel today. That was just pure genius. And that happened just because one day I didn't know I was talking about war in my intro to sociology class. I did about a 5-week section on war, and I was really, really busy. I was planning for a trip somewhere. I had 1,000 things going on, and I had to go into class, and I didn't know what I was going to talk about. It was a big lecture hall. It was like 250 people, and I stopped at my mailbox on the way to class, and I got this thing from the American Friends Service Committee, the Quakers, and they had this list of data about Iraq, the Iraq War, and I was reading it, one page, as I was walking to class, and I said, what would it be like to experience the Iraq War as an Iraqi? And then I went, let me do that. Let me just show my class, right? So I started talking about being in Iraq during the Iraq War, and I finished, and I said, "Damn, that was really cool." Like, I just was so entertained by the whole thing, and I thought, damn, like the way I flipped the script, and then I put myself in the shoes of average, everyday, ordinary Iraqis, and then I did it again I put some slides together again the next semester in my 119 class, and I was like, oh, and then I was like, that was brilliant. And I never say that. That was the first time I ever said to myself that I did something brilliant,
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, then that became the TED Talk, right?
So is that, would you say, like one of the foundational pieces of being a facilitator is doing that exercise of radical empathy for different...
Exactly. You got to put yourself in the shoes of someone else, because you got to want to know. And then you want to know if you're right. Like, I have ideas about you, how you see the world as a Brazilian, right? But I want to know if I'm right. So I'm not just going to tell you, hey, here's how you see the world. I'm going to come up with these ideas, and I'm going to start asking you questions and see if you give me what I think is it, right? So anyway, so that was my first brilliant thing. The second brilliant thing that I've ever done, there are only two things. The second was what I did yesterday in class, was tell Black history as though it happened to white people. Yeah. And I remember when I did that the first time, I was like, oh my God, that is just, you know who, it's kind of funny. Yeah, I just say it was brilliant. So two things. I've done two brilliant things. I can put it on my gravestone. He taught for 40 plus years, and he did two brilliant lectures.
I'll give you a third one, which was marrying Lori, for sure.
That's brilliant. That's different. Okay, that was a brilliant thing. But, yeah. The class yesterday, who's the Tyler Perry? Tyler Perry, the movie producer and actor and so on. His people, he does that Medea character. Anyway, his people saw that class at some point, and they called me up. They were going to make a movie. They were going to do a switch thing, do the same thing. And they called me and said, hey, could you consult on this? But it never got the green light. It never went anywhere. But, yeah, it was anyway, that was yesterday's class. So that was pretty cool. When that's a class where I talk more, right? I'm just on fire. I'm just like, boom,
Yeah.
All right, but listen, let's go. Let's bring your colleagues in. Now there's Medea. Yeah.
You've never heard of Medea?
Dude, he's
No,
Brazilian. Come on.
Yeah, I fall short in the movie scene, media.
American
So-
culture scene.
Mhm. Yeah.
But it's pretty cool for me to have two things that I can say and publicly, right? I can publicly say it. Brilliant, right? And that's good. I've got two. And I'm going to try to get a third before I retire or die. I'm going to try to have three. But, but two's good.
We'll stay tuned.
Yeah, stay tuned. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man, let's go. Let's bring in Pedro, why don't you introduce your team members?
Yeah, I'm glad you guys joined. Ishvan and Peyton, they're facilitators, student facilitators at World in Conversation. I think Ishvan is your third semester training with us, and Peyton is your second semester training with us, right? And I feel like something really cool is that this class doesn't really connect too much with their major particularly or with their degree. I mean, for Peyton, a little more. I think that's cool with Ishvan is just a business accounting student, just out of interest and passion for the communication and for what happens at World in Conversation. And, seeing you guys grow throughout the years into stepping into your identity and owning the differences about the way that you are in the world, and leveraging that to become leaders in the different spaces that you're in, whether it's through World in Conversations or different spaces that you're a part of with the university, to just create connection between people, be a bridge for them to communicate and understand each other. Something I really cherish. And so I'm glad you guys joined and you get to chat with Sam because, in a big way, what we do at World in Conversation is what he's doing, and what he's doing is what you're doing. So I'm curious to hear about the similarities and the differences. And
well, let me ask, I'm going to start with Peyton. First off, what drew you to World in Conversation?
I mean, honestly, like the introduction was through Social 19. I think I had a couple friends in the class, and I needed, something that checked all those gen ed markers, and race, ethnicity, and culture sounded like, a really interesting way to kill those requirements. And then I got there, and it was, and I'm sure you've heard this a million times, a class like unlike any class I'd had before. And it was my first class in Thomas 100 too. Which is a bit overwhelming, but the way in which like people were being presented like an open platform to share their thoughts, like as soon as the opportunity was presented to like keep doing that, like I knew I wanted to check it out.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, that's cool. I like that. And Istvan, how about you? What drew you? What draws you? What keeps you coming back to being a facilitator?
For me, I mean, I didn't go through the 119 pipeline. I got introduced to World in Conversation through the business school, where it was just like one of our assignments that we had to do one of these dialogues. And when I participated in it, it was something that I never have seen before. It was like an experience that it was something I've never encountered and something I feel like I was missing, like just like the critical thinking aspect of it. Just a dialogue of people from my dialogue was from all over the world, and just dissecting a topic so deeply, and even my thoughts throughout it changed, and that was really not revolutionary for me, but it was something that I've never encountered before. And my facilitators really encouraged me to check out World in Conversation and check out becoming a facilitator. And I didn't have much better things to do because I was a first semester freshman. So I
cool.
got looped in, and the thing that keeps me coming back is, I mean, definitely the people that I get to work with every day are some of the most passionate like most insightful people I've ever met. And just getting to hear from like all the different people that go to school at Penn State and like hear their different experiences. Those are the things that really keep me coming back. And I get to learn a great method that
well, so it's the method that by the way, Peyton, you volunteered in class, right? Oh, you're with two moms, right?
Yep.
I knew I recognized you. Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's cool. That was such a cool class that the two of you talking.
Yeah,
that was really cool.
What I remember about that class is, God, like I volunteered. I knew like I wanted to volunteer because for the most part, like I never encounter someone with a childhood like I had. And I thought that'd be interesting to talk about. And then like all of a sudden, like there was another guy who had a similar but like a different experience with it. And then you also opened the class with two girls who I think were like interracial, inter-country adoptions.
Yeah.
And like what their experience was. And I was just like, I was so like intrigued by that in the first half that I like forgot I was volunteering.
Yeah, that's cool. See, this is the thing, right? You start to see how you're similar and different from everybody, right? And that's what you guys, the two of you, are learning all the time. Hey, let me just say a couple quick things really fast before we get going now with the conversation. So, the discussion groups started back in the second semester that I taught the class because so many students were coming up after class to talk to me. And there wasn't a class after ours in the room. And so sometimes we would sit around for a half hour and longer. And then they would come to my office hours and they just needed space. There'd be like 5, 10, 15 people sitting around talking. And I finally said, hey, what if we had discussion groups? Would you guys sign up for them? And they say, yeah, we would. So the next semester, I recruited 5 people and they individually facilitated a discussion group 1 hour a week for people who wanted to do it in the class. But then I didn't do anything. I just put them in a room and said, okay, you guys just go talk, right? It's better than nothing. But then eventually I realized, okay, that's not better than nothing. We got to get this thing under control, right? So after a few years, I recruited Lori, who had been studying groups and had facilitated groups. That was what she was doing. And then she slowly took it over. And then she really started to develop through grounded theory. And grounded theory means that, so Pedro, you study grounded theory. You must, right? The idea that Lori is just going to build her theoretical model for dialogue and transformation based on what she sees day after day after day and year after year after year. And she's going to test out these different hypotheses all the time, just constantly moving things around. And what if we do this? And what if we do that? And then after 20 years, she developed this model that says, no, you do it this way. You go here, 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 right? So everything that you all are doing came from Lori's starting with her very first class on facilitation that she had when she was 20 years old back in 1984. And so, this is a long time coming, man. This is 40 years of this. And so it really just, there's such a science to it, that goes back so many years.
And one thing that's nice too with this model of grounded theory is that it's still built into the model that we have today at World in Conversation. And we have Elijah leading the observation team, and we're always watching dialogue and seeing what's working. And on a daily basis, our curriculum is changing based on the things that the students are doing or not doing and that they need, and that the support is based on data, right? It's a research center that is evolving this method for conflict resolution.
And a successful group is one, when it works, what's happening when it works?
What's happening when it works?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you, and then I have a question for Peyton, and it's fun. What's happening when a group works? When you be like, oh, okay, we tweaked it. That worked really well. Let's try to do that again.
Right. And it's the steps of, well, one thing, and there are multiple layers, I'd say, that have to work in order. Is one is people sharing their personal experience instead of conclusions, because conclusions we get everywhere, but personal experiences it's the richness of the uniqueness of the human experiences is getting to share what we've seen. The other thing is getting people to talk to each other, sharing their experiences and contrast them with each other and how they inform the world and how they inform our opinions. Creates conflict naturally because we see things differently. And I feel like once we have conflict, then we have the possibility of seeing what are even the problems that we're trying to solve, and what are the first couple of steps that we would take if we were to solve this problem.
And conflict just means that two people or three people or whatever are in the group with different opinions and different perspectives. Different perspectives. Hey, so Peyton, question for you. What's been the most difficult thing to learn to do as a facilitator?
I think it touches on what you guys were talking about earlier about not being neutral and like knowing or learning how much of that input or that weight to let in, because there are times that like whether it be like the topic, the prompt, or like how the group just decides to go, that like I have these like this knowledge, I guess, up in my head that I want to be like I have something like that would help I
could share this. You could benefit from what I know. Yeah.
And I just kind of have to remind myself to like sit back and hold my tongue sometimes.
And what do you get? How do you benefit from sitting back and holding your tongue?
Like part of the idea of what we look for in dialogues is welcoming those other perspectives, and I'm sure that some of the things that I want to share, if I shared them, they might not be the most conducive to getting those other opinions.
Right. They would shut people down.
Yeah, I don't want to shut people down by sharing something either like they don't agree with or they don't like or like whatever it may be. But usually either another participant hops in or my co will step in, and then I can take a breath.
So, okay. Yeah, that's cool. So it's fun. So you work with, two facilitators in every group, and you all are undergraduate students, and you go into these groups and you're saying, okay, we're going to have a 90-minute conversation. And give me kind of the sense of the flow of a group. These are students, the students who are coming to the conversation don't know each other. So they're entering in. They have no idea who's sitting. Maybe they recognize someone from their class or something, but they don't know. They don't know what the topic is. And they don't know until you put a topic out in the room. So can you say something about the topic? How do you guys come up with that, or how do you choose it, or what happens? How do you start a group?
The topic, I mean, I'd ask Pedro about that. He's mostly in charge of that. But I think, like you're talking about, like there's 800 kids in the class, and sometimes like people come in with their friends. But I usually prefer it where you don't know anybody. It's much easier to be vulnerable with strangers, or at least this is my experience, than with people you know, because they already have assumptions about you and they already have an opinion formulated about you. But I think the most important part of having people talk to each other in the dialogues is building like good rapport and having them feel comfortable in the space. I mean, that we work on that a lot, specifically just getting people like in the room and getting people like engaged, not even in the topic, but just as people, and like having them feel seen when they come in into the dialogue.
Yeah. And when you say rapport, you mean, so people are in a group of strangers. Everyone has this experience, right? Sometimes you're on a bus, you're in an airplane, you're in an airplane lot, who knows, you're somewhere, and suddenly someone starts talking, and then people just start sharing, and it's really natural, and it's comfortable, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
Is that the key? That's the thing you want to make happen?
Yeah, and especially, I mean, like all the students in the class and us too, we're like all undergraduate students. We're all between 18 and 22. So
yeah,
like we're so used to when we're in a group of strangers to just default to like looking at our phones.
right. Yeah.
Yeah. So our job is like mostly to like get a conversation going about anything. Usually we like to like talk about something that's happening to us or like something that's going on around them, just to like bring people in and like get them engaged in the dialogue and get them off their phones. Really.
And lower their kind of not defenses. It's not really defenses, but make them just open, be willing to put their thoughts out into the room. Exactly. Once you get started on a topic. Exactly.
Can I ask that question to you, Sam, too? Because you're working with the students who are like talking in front of 800 people, and they're gonna have to be thinking out loud, and that can feel risky because you might say something that you don't know what you're really saying. So how do you make like how do you build the trust for them to be able to participate truthfully?
Well, one is by never telling them they're wrong. So you guys have that experience as well, right? Like you can't look at someone and say, okay, that's a bad idea, or that's wrong, or that's whatever. Which is why Lori, from day one, it wasn't day one actually. She learned this over time. It didn't take very long, but you don't correct misinformation. So if someone says, yeah, well, you know how the Earth revolves, or the sun revolves around the Earth, or whatever, you just like, yeah, the sun revolves around the Earth. Okay, someone in the group's gonna correct that, but that's not your job, man. And there's a reason for that, because once you do that, even one tiny thing, it just, people start to censor themselves, and you don't want that. So I don't do that in class. Yesterday's class, by the way, if you notice, anybody who was watching, the two students who were white had such a difficult time, man. They just couldn't get in the role, because I was asking them to see those two black students sitting over there in those two chairs. They're the oppressors, man. You got to play that role, and you got to like see them that way, and you got to talk to them that way. And it's always hard for white students to do that. And so I had to really work with it, Yeah. That's it. So Peyton, what do you guys ever? How often, when we initially proposed that we were going to do this back, 30 years ago, there were some folks at Penn State, who we went to for some money to help support it, and they said like, "Oh man, you're going to have so much conflict and stuff," and we said, "Nah, we don't think we will actually." How often do you see conflict between people? Between
in the dialogues?
Yeah, in the dialogues. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it comes in different degrees. I feel like it really depends on, I guess, like that comfortability and the participants that I have, as well as the topic. I think usually the dialogue tends to lean towards the side of like, I agree, but like with these slight kind of tweaks. And then every once in a while we'll get like 2 or 3 participants who are like, actually, like, I'm going to counter that. And those are always, I feel like, the best dialogues. And like, I'll have a moment with my co-facilitator being like, oh yeah, like now it's going. Because we're able to really kind of like embrace those differences and try to like dig them out more and have them talk to each other. And usually like the conversation keeps going when they leave the room, or like those people will stay back to talk to us. And it's always like, I feel like a more rewarding experience. Not that like the ones where people agree aren't, because then those can have different kinds of benefits. But I feel like it is always more interesting in those like couple of dialogues where we have true disagreement.
The idea Pedro, you were saying this earlier. It's the elephant metaphor that Laura uses, right? You know, that if everyone's all saying, if they're all saying the same thing, you know, it's like, what's the point? What are we talking about? You know, we're just going to sit here in silence if we all think the same and so on. So that's cool. I like that. Hey, it's fun. What have you learned? You know, so the goal here is that the whole world could use this kind of training that you all are getting. Really. I mean, my God, just imagine if more of us, that the three of you, right? If more people got this training to be facilitators and would learn how to ask these really good questions and get these really fascinating conversations going. Conversations that would be better. Sometimes you don't need a facilitator, but you kind of have to get really lucky. So, Isfan, what have you learned about yourself by being a facilitator?
I honestly, like you were talking about, Sam, you were talking about earlier how like you never felt attached to like any of these like polar views. And like,
well, I've trained myself to not be attached to them because I have been attached to some really extreme views, but I've trained myself to disattach myself. Yeah, to unattach.
And for me, like that sounded like it really resonated with me because I remember when I came into World in Conversation, I was in a place where like I felt like I understood the world, and I understood the world in like maybe like a couple of like polarized ways, and like coming into World in Conversation and like talking to the participants and like hearing from also like my classmates who had very different views than me, it really like opened my eyes to like the different ways people see the world, and it really honestly changed the way I saw the world. And like the grounded experience of others like showed me that like some of the ideas that I was attached to were like I didn't like it made me see that I didn't understand why I was attached to them. Like
Right, I got you. Yeah. I have this a lot when I have a strong opinion about something. You know, for example, I have a strong opinion, or I had one. I mean, I don't know about tariffs. Oh my God, that's a really. I was saying to myself, like, these tariffs. We're gonna have tariffs, and tariffs are gonna replace taxes. And I thought to myself, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard in my life. Right? Like, oh my God. And then I thought, wait, hang on a second. What do I really know, though? Like, I mean, I have my idea. I know I'm a pretty smart guy, right? So I have my idea. So then I went out and I said, let me read someone who's an expert on tariffs. I better read because there are experts on this. I'm just a knucklehead, And so I started reading, and I started reading all these very complicated things about tariffs, right? And I went, huh, okay. But it was that knee-jerk thing, and I think so what the three of us are talking about, I'm hearing from you, is like what you all are learning, and what I have learned over the years is when I have a strong opinion, go find someone else who has the opposite opinion, who's smarter than me, or at least who's smarter than me on this issue, and complicate my opinion. And so and I think that, so what I'm hearing for you all is that's happening all the time. So Peyton, are there any issues around which you have, because you are being asked, you are asking people really their perspective on things, have you had any issues, things that come up that you've changed your thinking on, changed your mind, that you remember, or that you can come to mind immediately?
I mean, the one dialogue that I've been kind of on and off thinking about throughout our conversation is one I had a few weeks ago, and we ended up talking about COVID. for a majority of it. I don't remember what the prompt was, but we had a couple international participants and a couple like suburban Pennsylvania and I think surrounding states who were fairly vocal, and it ended up being really interesting because we had kind of the international perspective of like, oh, like you dumb Americans, like we just locked down and we solved it, and then kind of like the more rural perspective. And we had like one participant who was American. It was very like, you should mask up and get vaccinated. But then we had kind of the other camp, which was like, I didn't like how fast the vaccine was pushed through, or like I didn't want to wear a mask. I thought that infringed my like personal freedom, and like their like whatever personal experiences they brought to the table about like, you know, hanging outside with their friends or like life before and life after. And I don't know if that necessarily like changed my own perspective on it, but it added layers. Like it kind of was kind of that complication of really hearing like people's genuine concern, not just like, oh, I don't like masks. It was like genuine, like rooted, grounded, like experiences and thoughts of like concern over like their own individual freedoms and like what was crossing the line and what like the medical standard should be. And I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, it's cool, right? And this is, you know, you all are young, and if you're not doing this when you're young, if you don't just develop kind of like the muscle of asking a question before you offer an opinion on everything, right? If you don't develop that muscle, you're never going to develop it. I mean, it's going to be much more difficult. You know, for me, I didn't develop that muscle until I was in my 40s, probably my early 40s. I really strongly developed that muscle, and man, it was tough. And if I wasn't, and it's only because I was doing it on a public stage that I had to develop it really fast. You know, it's like when somebody is, I think about like, you know, say movie actors or something who take on some role and they have to get their body in shape really fast, and so they work with a coach or whatever it is, and they're pumping iron 6 days a week, and they're eating the right stuff, and like within 4 months their whole body has changed. That's kind of like how I was. I had to do that because I had to do it so fast, you know. Yeah.
I like that you're framing it as a muscle too, and the exercise of listening and asking a question before you make an opinion or you give an opinion or a judgment. Because I feel like listening has been treated, at least for me, throughout my development, it's like you're either good at it or you're not, or your ability to pay attention, right? Because it's connected to listening. Your ability to really pay attention. It's a muscle, you know, and it's not a gift that you get through genetic lottery. I mean, some people might have better attention than others through genetic lottery, but there's also the ability to improve that. And it's something really cool with our program that we have is the practical experience, you know? The way World in Conversation talks about facilitation is there's this method, there's the theory, there's the tools that you can use to listen and ask questions, but then you're in the stage, right? 3 times a week, you're facilitating, you're in front of your peers, and you might make a mistake and you might look silly, you know? And sometimes you do. That's when you learn and you're like, oh, I'm not doing that again, and I'm going to do something different. And so it happens really fast. I feel like it's that movie metaphor analogy. It's like it's really happening for people.
And you guys, y'all get coaching, right? I mean, this is, you know, you're getting coaching all the time by people who are watching your groups, and they're pulling you aside and saying, okay, you meet as facilitators 2 times a week, right?
Yeah.
And then you get coaching, and people are watching, they're like helping you along and moving you along. And
I think honestly the coolest part about like what we do is that most of the like training, it's not necessarily like in the classroom when we meet for class. It's like when we're in the dialogue and when we get like coached and like get feedback from like not just the like observers and the trainers, but also like each other. And honestly, like the most valuable thing I think in World in Conversation is like the like non-traditionalness of the learning.
Yeah. That's all Lori, because Lori early on said she was not just didn't want to give out information when she was teaching. So she said, no, we're going to all learn together.
Yeah.
And what's the coaching? What's it look like? Like what? Because I think of like my coaching really well, I never had a coach. So I had to really be my own coach. I had to go in and figure it out, And so, but what's that look like for the two of you?
I think it's not very dissimilar to not having a coach. It's like we get to practice like certain aspects of the method once, but like most of it is you try it. If it works and like if it fits your style, then you go with it. If like there needs to be improvement, like someone's going to be there to give you that feedback. And the great thing is probably 2 days later, you have another dialogue where you can put it into practice.
And so when you say you try it, meaning like you try to ask a question in a certain way, or you try to get a student on one side of the group to ask a question of a student on the other side of the group, and those kinds of things, right?
Right. Yeah. Like our practices, like asking questions, directing the dialogue. I mean, a thing I've like worked on a lot is like interrupting and getting a picture of the person's experience.
Yeah. Eric Sell in the chat just said it's like how it's very similar. It's very close to the training that therapists go through. And I think, well, Lori focus was on group work. And so she really learned how to manage a group, like, all the invisible connections between people. And, one of the really interesting things that I'll never forget the story she told. And then Peyton, I want to ask you the similar question. She was doing a group one time with a family. It was a family, big family. And she had somebody in her ear who was watching, which is, what we did forever in Pond, and the person was in her ear saying to her, hey, okay, so listen, here's what I want you to think about for your next question. Get ready for it. What's your next question going to be? Meanwhile, the people in the group were talking, they're having a conversation. And the person in her ear was her supervisor. And her supervisor was saying, don't listen to what they're saying. You're getting lost in the words of what they're saying. It doesn't matter what they're saying. It's irrelevant. Come up with the question you want. Watch the energy in the group. Watch what's going on in the group. Like, ask your question, not based on the details of what they're talking about, but what's happening. So the person is talking to Lori the whole time, right? So she couldn't listen to what was being said in the group. And then they stopped talking and they all look at Lori, and Lori had to come up with the question. And that was just pure brilliance in terms of a therapist coach trying to get her to stop with that. Watch the group. The group has an energy. And like, so Peyton, do you see, and you're a newer facilitator, you have less experience than, it's fun, but how is that for you to see the process of the group? Not just the words of the information, the things that people are saying.
Yeah, I think that's something I'm still really trying to work on and learn how to tune into. Because I think part of me as a facilitator, when I get into dialogue and like I hear an interesting perspective, like I almost tend to like lock in on it sometimes because like I want to know more. I want to know more. Yeah. And sometimes I don't know, like I've worked like I tend to lean towards the more like personal questions, like getting that personal experience on the table as a facilitator, which is something I've realized. And then I think the dialogues where I work best with my co is when my co is kind of more in tune to those group dynamics and it like poses the group question. So I think that's something I'm really trying to like learn how to take on myself. But I feel like I bounce back and forth between like being locked in on what that person is saying and how they're saying it. And then also like like half listening, being like, okay, like what do I ask next? Like where am I going with this? What's the angle? What's the connection?
Yeah.
And it's
Pedro,
tough.
Go ahead. Yeah, it's tough to do, right?
Yeah, because it's a balance between like being engaged and aware of what they're saying and how they're saying it and how the group is responding, but then also like making the connection to the next thing or the next person.
So the easiest thing to do is to just get information from people and get them to contribute to the information that other people are putting out there, you know? Have you had the same experience? What do you think about what so-and-so just said? I mean, it's very direct, but the process thing is watching that group energy. And of course, when the group has a really good energy and when it's functioning really well together, that's when the group is running like a really well-tuned automobile. And then when that's happening, the group's going to get to some new place. It's more likely to get to some really cool place. So Pedro, is that kind of process work in a group? That's the hardest thing to learn and to teach somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right on that? Do you have anything you would add to it?
I like the automobile analogy because to me, I always think about engine. There's an engine of the group of like, in the beginning, for example, you're not really spending too much time with each person, giving them a podium to speak on and give all their opinions. You want them to say a couple of things and give their experience, but you want to move quickly, because as you move quickly, people start getting activated and they know that in any moment it'll be their turn to say something and think out loud. And then slowly the group is leaning in and you have people who are involved. It's a group mind then. It's not just individuals thinking. And then the other thing is people are reactive. It's so fun. And that's part of what Peyton was talking about with working in two. While one person is asking a question, the other facilitator can just be scanning the room and seeing like who's flinching, you know, at what Sam just said.
Right. You had a reaction to that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then it's more being a traffic cop, a steel lawyer's analogy here too.
Yeah.
You're the traffic cop for the information, more so the one that is the GPS for the conversation, right? You're not so much telling them where they're going, but you're like, wait, you go now and you go now, and then you go and then you go, and then together we build a direction.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You know, one of the things I think I would say to anybody listening is, and maybe you all can add to this because we've all been in those conversations with people we kind of know or people we know well or strangers or whatever that were just really good conversations. They were good. We were at a party or we were, again, at a lounge somewhere, we were somewhere, but we were in a conversation and it just flowed and people got deep and people asked each other questions and people listened to each other and people didn't want it to stop. And it was just one of those really cool engagements, human engagements, right? And what you all are trying to do is reproduce those engagements. And what I often say, one of my things is that, well, if you could have recorded that conversation that you had, that you still remember because it was so cool, wherever it was, right? It was in who knows? There was probably one or two people in the group who were asking questions of other people. And they were aware of the dynamics that were going on with people. And that's what made that conversation so really special. And if there weren't those people, it was just happening naturally. But what the three of you are trying to do is make those kinds of conversations all the time. You know? So am I right on that? Is that how you're seeing it? Like you got 90 minutes here, man. You want it to be the best possible conversation that these 10 people are going to be able to have. Is that what you think about, Peyton, when you walk into a room?
I mean, sometimes like it depends on the energy of the group and kind of the energy between me and my co. Like I'm doing like our little intro or building rapport. I'm like, all right, guys, like you're stuck in this room for the next hour and a half. The more you talk, the faster it goes. Like, because some people come in and like they don't know what to expect, and they think like that they're going to get graded on like participation or what they say or like whatever it might be. And we like, it's really those first, like, I would say like 15, 20 minutes where we're trying to break those walls and be like, no, like this is for you guys to just talk. Talk and talk without us calling on you, because if we have to call on you, like it breaks that a little bit.
Yeah. It's fun. How about, have you had groups that people really didn't want it to end? They just really wanted to keep talking?
Yeah, I think I've had a lot of experiences where I think the hard part about like having having the conversation, but having like students engage is they come in with the assumption that this is for my class and this is for a grade and it's like a chore to do. Like it's like doing homework. And I was actually talking to a participant yesterday, and he was saying like he came in with these assumptions, and he came out with like kind of like a perspective, like changing experience.
Yeah.
And just get like the hard part is getting the ball rolling on that. Like you'll have students that really want to like engage and are like really willing to talk and share their experience, and I'd say probably 60% of them are like shy and have like a preconceived notion of like, I'm just here to get my grade and I have to do this. And
and you got to break through that. Well, one of the issues is that human beings, we don't have a lot of experience of people asking us questions.
Right.
We really don't. And if we ask a question, it's a teacher or somebody in our lives who already knows the answer that they want to hear. And, for me, that when I started therapy when I was about 26, 27, I guess. And I'll never forget my very first day in a therapist's office. And I answered his questions. I mean, I talked for about 45 minutes answering questions. And they were questions that I really hadn't been asked. I just had not had the experience of that. I mean, who has that experience, right? Like, where you just, I mean, you do if you have a friend who asks a lot of questions or something, but most of us don't really have that. And then at the end, he said, hey, what do you think about it? Do you want to come back? And I thought, hell, of course I want to come back. I've never had this experience before, And so a lot of students come without that. And so they don't know that that's possible.
Sam, on that note too, I want to respond to that question, because I feel like as someone who's been through the training and I've been through the World in Conversation culture and share these spaces and I seeing the students too, like Peyton Ishwan, I feel like the conversation that people don't want to end. Sometimes class ends and students will stay for another hour and a half hanging out in Pond, which is the building that we're located in, and asking each other questions and just talking about all sorts of topics, right? And without the boundaries of being in an academic space, but they're with their friends who are trained. And so with time, once people realize, oh, we can ask each other questions and listen to each other, and this can just be a thing that we do. And I just getting to watch students, because I don't know, my experience here in the university is bell rings, you get your backpack, and you leave. Right, you can't wait to leave the class because it's time. And seeing people from all different degrees, I feel like it's the exciting thing about culture is that we're all different. We belong because we're all different. We're all excited to be with different people, and we're excited to ask different people questions. And it's, as a teacher, to me, it's like my favorite thing to see. It's like, oh, they really are learning from each other. They're really asking each other. They're really curious about seeing the world through each other's eyes, and it's like, oh, hell yeah.
That's cool. This is education, right? I mean, this is it. This is it's the best of education. Yeah. I think that for Lori, this is her genius, really. And what she's taught me, and she calls me her best student because I'm doing it because I've been listening. She's been working with me for so long, and I do it on a public stage, with live cameras. But I'm just doing what she's taught me to do, and I think it's it's really fascinating. Okay, so here's a kind of a final couple of questions, and then we'll cut out. How has this work shaped who you? And if all three of you could answer, I think would be really good. How has this work engaging people with opinions, with lots of different opinions, and in particular, lots of opinions that are different than your own, right? But how has this work shaped who you are and who you? When, who do you? So that's the frame of the question. But now I want to ask a very specific one, which is like, who do you see yourself wanting to be 10 years from now because of this work? Yeah. Yeah. Or how do you see yourself wanting to be in the world 10 years from now because of the work? And anyone can go first.
I mean, I can hop in. I guess as kind of Pedro mentioned, this in a way I'm hoping will tie into my career because I'm studying political science and global international studies, and I guess kind of with the ultimate goal of working abroad, like whether that be like as a representative, like ambassador, diplomat, something in that vein. And I feel like the reason I was probably drawn to this and why I kept coming back, especially because I took a semester off because it didn't work with my schedule, and I like during that period I really was like, oh, like I feel like I'm missing something now.
Mm-hmm.
So I made sure I had room in my schedule this semester. But I feel like the things that I'm like learning and practicing now are really going to influence like how I move forward into like the next stage of my education, and if that's like grad
Mm-hmm.
school, law school, or working in say like the State Department or whatever avenue I proceed forward. We had was it Brecklin, the lawyer, come and like speak to our class today, and like how like this training helped her like differentiate herself from her like peers and in the application process and as a lawyer because like of the way she asks questions. And I really see that like playing a role in how I go into like my future career and like being in like myself, of like remembering to stay curious and not like negating any perspectives, especially if I'm going to be like working with like policy and like all different kinds of backgrounds around the world, and just like kind of trying to find a way to bring them all together.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, that's cool. That's a really nice answer. I like that. Yeah, it's fun. How about you? How do you see yourself in 10 years because of this?
I have a hard time thinking about 10 years from now, but
that's good.
I think this work like gives me the foundation to be able to like lead a group of people. I mean, I'm going into the business world. Like I'm studying accounting. I'll probably do that for I don't know how long, but I know I will end up becoming a leader of some sort and working. And it's really valuable to know like where each person on your team is positioned and like how they see what they see in like a context. And being able to ask the right questions and being able to like work in groups, like work in that group is, I hope that's what I can take away from this like experience, is that like now I know how to do that. And I like when I'm faced with that, like I have the tools to be able to do what I need to do.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. And it does matter because you talk about leadership. Leadership requires being able to follow the people around you who are the the most important people in your life as a leader. Like, you know, these are the people that you appoint or that are in these positions to shape what's happening. And so if you're not listening to them, you're wasting time. So that's cool. Yeah. And you will stand out, the two of you, the three of you, right? Because what we've heard over these decades from people in all walks of life, man, is how much the training, learning how to ask questions, learning how to listen to people, and learning how to manage a group energy just absolutely distinguishes them from everybody else. Adrian, how about you? Where do you, actually, I'm going to ask a different question for you because you're much more advanced and you're obviously one of the trainers. What do you still need to learn? What are you really working on as a facilitator and a trainer in this whole world? What is it you're trying to do things like, you really got to get better?
I'm trying to learn. Trying to learn how to keep this work, how to bring it into different spaces, how to keep it alive, how to make people see its value, how to, I've been doing the work of staying neutral and not fighting, being like the bridge in between opinions. And I feel like now I'm growing more into being an advocate for this because I really believe education is going through a transformational moment right now. In the world of education, I'm getting my master's on it. With artificial intelligence, the need for the processing of information, which is just reading all these papers, and producing information, which is writing all these papers, which is what everything seems to be based on, is becoming very irrelevant, just very automated. And I see more and more that people are having a hard time talking to each other, how to make friends, how to talk to your mom, how to talk to your dad, how to talk to somebody you're interested on, or how to talk to your enemies. More importantly, if you look in the media, this lack of skill, of just it blows my mind. And I feel like the next step into education chooses to evolve and stay alive for higher education institutions. It's like we gotta bring people that are able to talk to each other, and people need to see the value of what we're doing by experiencing. Like they come through World and Conversation. If people are moved, they'll see that there is a value in experiencing things like this. And I think, the more spaces that I enter in, I try to balance. I'm learning how to balance being an advocate with just being a practitioner of the method. Just using the skills that I have in my grad school classes of asking people questions when the professor might feel like it's too sensitive of a topic, but I feel like it's important that this person says what they think about it. I'll just be that guy, and then when they ask me why do I do it, I'll tell them. But taking space, opening my elbows a little bit, and it's hard for me. I like to be more in the background, but I'm learning.
Yeah, that's cool. I think it's well, for me, it's really exciting. And one thing that, keeps me, seeing people come alive and seeing people come alive to the work of Lori, because it's really not the work of me. Like Peyton, a lot of people come to World and Conversation, Pedro and Peyton, the two of you, through Social 19. But, you get there by engage. You stay there because of the genius that Lori and her team, started with her, but it's a team. It's, it's DJ. I mean, there's just so many people, right, who are part of this, have been part of it over the years.
Can I ask you, Sam, like, what do you see as the next steps in the evolution of World and Conversation? Where do you see this work going as the co-founder?
It feels like it has to just get outside the university in a different way. The university is always a good space. We do it here because it's easy to put groups of people together. So you get a lot of practice. And so that makes it really simple because it's all about practicing, so what a great place to do that. Makes it easy, and so, So that's valuable, but in the end, it's gotta get outside. It has to grow. We just need more facilitators, man. We just need more. We're in a, as you all know, well, the two, Isfan and Peyton don't really know, but Pedro, you do, and we're really on a fundraising campaign, trying to find, as Lori says, a needle in a haystack to just keep this thing going. And everything changed at the university. The way things are being financed and funded, and we lost so much of our funding at World in Conversation, and we're hanging on by our fingernails. And I think it needs to get outside. And I'm optimistic. I should ask the question about what asking me how the future is looking to me today as I talk with students. I'm optimistic. I think we're in a difficult period right now. Peyton, you said earlier, oh, maybe I'll work at the State Department. And I thought, if we have a State Department, and of course I'm laughing. I shouldn't be laughing. I should be crying, but I can't not laugh, because if I don't laugh, I can't keep doing this work, man. There's just no way. So I just have to laugh, oh God. But I'm also crying at some level. But anyway.
Yeah, I have a lot of that right now.
Okay, well, good. But you need to laugh more. Don't cry. Come on, you all really need. Yeah. Eric Sell says, and thanks for modeling how to have an orderly closet. That's really valuable. Are you a Virgo by chance?
Oh, me? I missed that comment. No, I'm not.
Okay, all right, okay. Well, that's pretty ordered. Yeah.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, I'm optimistic. I have to be. So, I remain.
I'm just grateful I'm not a senior yet.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about what you're gonna do next. Okay.
I have a lot of friends in my classes who are going on USA jobs, and there's nothing there.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm doing a lot of laughing.
Well, yeah. Well, this is St. Patty's Day weekend, so you can go drown your sorrows. People don't know what that is. Several years ago, about 20 years ago now, almost, maybe 15. St. Patrick's Day was happening during spring break. And so some undergraduate student had this brilliant idea, they thought at the time, to say, we're going to call for St. Patrick's Day celebration before people go on break, and we're going to call it State Patty's Day. So they always pick a weekend out when St. Patrick's Day is going to fall on or near spring break. And then it just is this big, huge drinking fest by students. And the truth is, people have the idea that college students are drinking all the time, and that's just kind of what it is. But the fact is, that's not really. A large number of college students don't drink at all, and many just drink a very little. But you just need. It's like with anything else, you need a certain number to make it look like they're all doing this, and they're really not all doing. You're not all doing that. So, yeah. But anyway, that's the thing going on here at Penn State. Mm-hmm. Hey, listen, thanks for joining. Thanks for being on. I really appreciate the conversation. It's nice.
Thank you for
Peyton.
Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah, thanks.
I could talk forever, but I follow your class on Instagram, and I get the clips every once in a while. And I'm like, man, I wish I could sit back in on that class. So
yeah,
it was really great to talk to you guys again.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us, Sam.
Nah, thanks for joining. I think it's really valuable that people really understand that there's the thing that they see, this big classroom, but there's all this other really, really good stuff happening at the smaller scale that is, in my mind, frankly, much more exciting than what happens in the big classroom, what you all are doing. And we used to be huge. We were the largest dialogue center, university-based dialogue center in the world for quite a number of years. Yeah, running like 25 of these dialogues every single day, 6 days a week. Pretty intense. Pretty really amazing. So we're going to get back up to that.
Dude, revolutionary. Nothing short of revolutionary. I feel like
it
it blows my mind oh my God, in the system of education, the fact that also the courage that it takes for you guys to just like do such a, yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, you're so young. You're so young, and to go in and have these conversations with your peers and to lead them and facilitate them. Yeah, it's completely revolutionary. If the world understood, you know what I mean? All the nonsensical bullshit that passes for education, if the world understood, could have a window into this, my God, you know, we just need some big billionaire to step forward and say, all right, come on, let's go. Let's revolutionize learning.
Yeah, and for the people watching, the people that watch your stream too, it's like this is a window, right? And I feel like this is the hope of this conversation, part of it at least, other than, you know, getting the joy of seeing different perspectives. But this being a window,
Yeah.
and if you feel like it's valuable, and I know these people in the chat because I follow the chat too, and I see them watching. It's just sharing with the people that you know. You know, if you find this work valuable, it's sharing in the spaces, because this is the time in the world. We never had a time like this where you can reach 1,000, 1,000,000 people in 30 seconds, right? If you have the connections. And so we can really use social media and the digital world to our advantage to make the things that really matter to us have a space. Right? And so I feel like slowly we're making room. I see you streaming, Sam. I see you working.
We'll see. Yeah,
we're working here too on the ground with World in Conversation to keep things going.
Yeah. Well, listen, thanks. Go ahead. It's fine.
Well, I just wanted to thank you for being an advocate for like what we do.
Yeah.
It's like, it's really important. Like, not just, well, to us as facilitators, but like probably to the world in general as well. Is having a person talk about what we do and like put it out there into the universe.
Yeah. No, it feels it's an honor for me, actually. Yeah. All right. Any final words, Peyton?
I don't think so. I'm grateful for the Wink community as a whole. I feel like it really it grounds me as a person, and especially like after taking a semester off, I feel like I appreciate the value more now.
Cool. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, wait till you got out into the world and you look back at Penn State and like you're gonna oh man, God, I so miss those carefree days. Yeah, man. So don't worry right now, because you'll have lots of time to worry in the future. Right now, you just want to be carefree and enjoy it all. Yeah. You never go back. All right, listen, everyone. Hey, thanks for joining, and for the three of you, thanks for hopping on, and anybody listening and watching, thanks for being part of it. It's really cool. Appreciate it. Be well. Yeah.